Bienvenidos y muchas gracias por estar aquí. Yo soy Angélica, la directora de este centro, y esta vez estoy junto a Christopher Constantino. Él es profesor en la Universidad Estatal de Florida, es una persona con tartamudez también y es terapeuta de habla. Además de ello, y la razón por la cual está aquí, de hecho, es porque él es uno de los autores del libro Stammering Pride and Prejudice, o como se diría en español, Tartamudez, Orgullo y Prejuicio. Este libro, en mi humilde opinión, es uno de los mejores libros que hay sobre tartamudez en el área, y sé que también es la opinión de muchas otras personas que trabajamos con personas que tartamudean. Entonces, el propósito de este video es comentarles un poco sobre lo que dice este libro, sobre algunas ideas bastante interesantes, y bueno, que puedan tener un acercamiento a esto, ya que lamentablemente no está disponible en español. So, well, thank you, Chris, one more time for being here. I'm very happy.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I'm excited to talk with you.
So, well, let's start with something very general, and it's the title of the book, which is very impressive and say a lot of what the book is about. The name, as I was saying in Spanish, is Stammering Pride and Prejudice, and yeah, we definitely can see why you name it like that, but I would like to ask you to share a bit why you decide, or well, your team decide to name this book in that way.
Yeah, so it's a play off of Jane Austen novel, Pride and Prejudice, right? And we liked that those two words, right, pride and prejudice, capture, I think, what we wanted to talk about in the book. We didn't want to write a book about therapy per se. We wanted to write a book that used people's experiences with stuttering and try to understand how society contributes to those experiences, how society makes stuttering more difficult, right? So how prejudice contributes to our struggles. And then we also wanted to capture stories of people reframing and thinking about their stuttering differently in ways that made stuttering something to be proud of, something that might be good, that adds to their lives.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because I mean it's completely different to the majority of books about stuttering, because it's, I mean, it could be very easy to find, I don't know, book with techniques to be more fluent, and things like that, but definitely not a book that looks for a different view to see stammering from a social model, as you mentioned in the book.
Yeah, and we, that was on purpose, right? Like we thought, not that we shouldn't talk about therapy anymore, but just that lots of people have already been talking about it, and there really wasn't anything written about the social model and stuttering, especially in a way that was accessible to people. We really wanted this to not be an academic book, right? To be a book that any person who stutters or speech therapist could pick up and understand and read without it being too difficult.
Yeah, because just like the opposite of the medical model, when it's more like, okay, let's going to try to fix this, with this model and with ideas you mentioned in the book, it's more like, okay, we need to work a lot in society too, and a completely different way. Could you share a bit about this difference between the medical model and the social model?
Yeah, so I think they're just two different ways to understand where disability comes from, right? So according to the medical model, disability comes from your body, right? There's something wrong with how your body is functioning, or it's structured, and so you need some sort of a medical intervention, medicine, surgery, therapy to correct what's wrong and restore normal functioning. Right? And I think that's the typical way people think about disability. The social model looks at it from the opposite perspective. How is society creating barriers for people with different sorts of bodies? Right. So the assumption is that there's not a right way for a body to be, that there's not a right way for a body to function. It's just that society is built for certain types of people, and when you don't quite fit that standardized way of being, you run into difficulty, right? And so the classic sort of image is of a person in a wheelchair can't get up a flight of steps, right? That flight of steps was made for somebody who could walk, and if they had a ramp, they'd be able to get to where they were going. They wouldn't be disabled, right? And so we were trying to use those ideas and apply them to stuttering, which I think is a bit more difficult just because speaking is abstract, right? So trying to understand the barriers in society, I think takes a bit more imagination, because you don't see, it's not as nice as a flight of steps, right? But I think we talk a lot about like expectations of fluency, right? That when people see you, they expect you to speak a certain way, and when you don't, you're treated differently.
Yeah, and it's crazy how society has built like that, and we have normalized a lot of things too, like the Siri the iPhones have, like, could be different for that to understand if a person who stutter is talking and that kind of things. Another very, very interesting thing that, to be honest, was very mind-blowing when I read that part, and the role models we have, and how it's very common that for speech therapy, especially for children, that the speech therapist can show them some pictures of famous people who stutter. But what we are not thinking is that the underlying message is that those singers or actors are people who stutter, yes, but you don't hear them stutter more. And how it's important to change those things. And to be honest, from the moment I read that part, I was like, okay, I'm not going to show those pictures anymore. Because yeah, and could you tell us a bit more about it?
Yeah, I think you explained it fairly well, that a lot of our role models have a history with stuttering, but we never hear them stuttering, right? Like therapists will show a kid a actor or a politician or a singer and say, you could be anything you want to be, just look at this person. And there's a mixed message there, because yes, it's inspiring that a person who stutter accomplished that, but did they accomplish it before or after they stopped stuttering, right? And not everybody can speak as fluently as that person can, right? And so is the message inspiring, or is the message saying, if you become fluent, you can become like this person? And unfortunately, and I think this speaks to what we're talking about, we don't have a lot of examples of stuttering people who are still stuttering in the media, right? We don't have examples of actors who, when they give interviews, they're stuttering, or politicians, when they give interviews, they're stuttering. Those people exist. There's 1% of the population stutters. They're out there, they're holding jobs, they're working, they're just not famous, right? So I think finding more helpful role models is really important.
Yes, and this is very related with the concept, or with a phrase of overcome stuttering, which is very usual to hear that. And it's like, are we really overcoming stuttering? It's not exactly like that. I mean, we can overcome the bad experiences, that kind of things, but stuttering is going to be with us too, like the rest of our lives for most of us.
Right.
So it's like, you are not going to fight with it. It's like you accept it. And that's another very interesting thing I remember that I read for the first time there.
My chapter in the book was about sort of what's good about stuttering. And if you ask people that, they'll often give you an answer, but the answer has to do with not necessarily what's good about stuttering, but what, like, something they learned by overcoming something difficult, right? So they may have learned to not care about what people think so much, or they may have learned to be more empathetic, or, you know, people tell you all kinds of different things, but that's not really unique to stuttering, right? That's something you learn just by going through a difficult situation. And so I think what's a much more interesting question is, when you're stuttering, is anything good happening in that moment, right? That you're sharing with somebody. And you also mentioned about how, especially when we talk about the celebrities, right? That the message is usually about how they stopped stuttering, how they overcame it, and how that's not particularly helpful, given that most of us will stutter forever, right? That we're not going to stop stuttering. And it's an even greater mixed message when a lot of those celebrities, it seems like you can tell that they still struggle a little bit. I'm thinking particularly of President Biden. It seems like sometimes he still changes his words around and gets stuck and dances around moments of stuttering. And it would be really nice to hear him say that, right? It would be really nice to hear him say, you know, I haven't overcome stuttering, but I've overcome fear, or I've overcome anxiety or embarrassment. I think that would be a much more helpful message.
Yeah, and that's also another thing I remember you mentioned in your chapter about showing vulnerability. Like, it's okay to feel some things, like we are humans. It's just part of it too.
Yeah, not only is it okay, but I think it accomplishes something good, right? When you're vulnerable, that's how you form relationships, right? That's how you form intimacy. And stuttering allows us to do that in ways that we wouldn't be able to if we didn't stutter, right? Like I can have a conversation with somebody just walking by them in a coffee shop or in a restaurant, in a bar, and if I get stuck, something different happens in that moment, right? It's not just a quick conversation. It's like they're noticing me losing control momentarily. And I think that makes them witnessing me vulnerable, makes that interaction more intimate and forms a deeper connection with people. But we have to let it happen, right? If we're hiding it and not allowing it out, then you miss that.
Yes, this remind me a phrase that I think is from the NSA. It's something like, if you want to spread acceptance, then stutter openly, or something like that. And it's completely true. Like, the only way we can really show and share this message of acceptance is stuttering openly, and, you know, showing that we do this too, and it's completely fine. It's just a different way of talking.
Right.
Another thing I want to mention before finishing this video is that almost at the end of the book, there are some pictures that I would like to share.
Yeah.
Because also to me it was very like mind-blowing to see that. And I remember when I was talking with some friends here, I was like, okay, look these pictures at the end of the book, because I want to show it on the camera. And it was about capturing the moment of stuttering, which, I mean, before that, I've never seen that. And it's how, okay, so you can see it, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's something, again, completely different that things we see usually in stuttering books. Here's another one, just for those who can't or who don't have the book. And by the way,
I love all your little notes. That's really fun to see that.
Yeah, I have it for colors, like highlighting different things, because as I always say, and when I had to do some interviews, I mean that some did to me, I always say the name of the book as my favorite. It's a shame that it's not in Spanish. I know that some people will ask me that. It's a shame it's not in Spanish, but well, at least I think that with this video we can share a bit about it. And okay, returning to the photos. Again, that was very, very nice to see that. And it's also a very nice way to normalize those things. Could you tell us a bit more of this, like the importance of normalizing this, and art, and the art can be also a very nice way to do this?
Yeah, so we had during one of the International Stuttering Awareness Day online conferences. Are you familiar with that conference? It's called ISAD, the International Stuttering Awareness Day. They do it every year. The International Stuttering Association puts it on, and we had made a post asking people for art. You know, we were trying to, because we were trying to show how stuttering could be beautiful, right? That it's society makes us think that it's this ugly thing, but that actually it makes us unique and special. And so we just asked people if they'd be interested in submitting some artwork for the book. And those photographs are from a photographer in Iceland. And he had been doing a project, and he sent the images to us. And what's really nice about them is it's people stuttering, but they look good, right? Like they look beautiful. And it's capturing this moment that we were taught to be ashamed of. But then you look at the pictures and like you don't feel bad for those people, right? You don't feel like they're doing anything wrong. They seem like they're doing something that is interesting and special.
Yes, I remember when I see that, I was like, I do this too.
Right, and that's what we want. We want people to look at them and see themselves in those pictures. Yeah.
I know that for those who are still very focused on fluency, this conversation could sound like, I don't know, two crazy ones talking about a subject. But to be honest, it's first of all, I think the best thing we can do with ourselves to accept that part of us, which of course is not easy. I know that, I'm sure you know that too. At the beginning, it's like our society is trying to fix something that they think it has to be fixed. But with time, you realize that it's our way to talk, is who are we? And I'm sure that we like it in this way. Like now we don't want to eliminate this part of us. And I'm really happy that in general you can, and all the team of the writers that work there, because there are many, can share a lot about this new message and these new ideas that are very important for us.
Yeah, we were, it was a lot of fun to work on the book. We got to talk with a lot of really interesting people.
Yeah, well, that's great. So, well, thank you so much, Chris, for your time and for working on this too. I think it was a very nice conversation. Time flies. So, well, thank you for this conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I enjoyed it.
Y muchas gracias a ustedes por haber visto este video. Como han podido ver, hay nuevas formas de ver la tartamudez también. Y bueno, una vez más aquí vamos a intentar mostrarles las cosas que se están trabajando afuera para que vean que otras miradas se están empezando a explorar también. Así que bueno, espero que los hayan disfrutado, los invito a suscribirse porque siempre hay videos nuevos con expertos en el tema, así que ya será hasta la próxima vez.